Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm going to be your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and joining me, as always, each and every single week to help me break down and analyze and look at these prospects coming into the 2024 NFL Draft. You'll love them. You might have some angry replies to them on Twitter. The one, the only, Daniel Kelly. What's going on, DK?
Hey, doing pretty well, Logan. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, man. Excited to get on a video with you. Talk Jared Verse, defensive end coming out of Florida State. A lot of hype around this young man. But before we get into it, guys, if you enjoy the episode, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and of course, subscribe on social media so you don't miss a single episode. We go live each and every single week. And it's always a fun time here on the channel. So without further ado, DK, I will kick the ball over to you in the new NFL kickoff fashion. And I will have you just break down what you think about Jared Verse. Where do you think he would go and what you like and dislike about the young man?
Absolutely, Mr. Landers, and you're right. I definitely have my fan base on Twitter. There is no question about that. And we're going to break down Jared Verse there, number 5 on your screen today. You see him there, and he is 6'4", 260 pounds. I have looked at him now in 2022 in 8 games, and also I looked at him in 2023 against Duke, LSU, Clemson, Florida, Louisville, and Miami, another 6 games. So I have now studied him. That's right, studied him in 14 games total, trying to look at more games this year for the first time ever to kind of see a player's full body of work even more extensively to narrow that gap and that margin and make sure that we're seeing as much as we possibly can for everybody who comes to the site at firstroundmock.com. My edge one, that's right, my edge one in the 2024 NFL Draft, Jared Verse. You're going to probably hear something a little bit different out of me if you've watched the show for a while when I talk about these edge rushers because I love pass rushers. This is my thing. When you look at Verse, shades of giant star pass rusher Kayvon Thibodeau. When you look at Verse on game film, of course, I had him mocked. Thibodeau pre-draft 2022 top 5. Kayvon Thibodeau came off this season, tied for 12th in the NFL 2023 with 11.5 sacks. That's who he reminds me of. This is a guy I wrote in February 12th article in firstroundmock.com that he has more upside than 2023 Defensive Rookie of the Year Will Anderson Jr. with the Houston Texans. Why? Better agility, better pass rush moves, better motor, more want. And that's really what this comes down to in the NFL is a 4-letter word. Want, W-A-N-T, and that's what he brings to the table. Am I high on Verse? Oh yeah, I am, and here's why. Like I said, I've seen enough of him in these 14 games to say this: that Jared Verse will dominate in the National Football League. Maybe a little bit of kind of a mixture between that Kayvon Thibodeau, as I mentioned a couple of times, and a Khalil Mack is another name that came to mind when I watched him on film. He's a guy who can stand up off the edge or put his hand down in the dirt and come off the ball at the snap. But these are not just the reasons why he reminds me of Thibodeau. It's actually the way Verse attacks is what reminds me of Thibodeau most of all. This guy has pure brute power. And that's the way I would talk if I was in an NFL war room pre-draft going through the meetings. What does Verse look like on film? To paint a picture with words, dominant. That's another key word I would use to describe Jared Verse. If you don't believe me, take a look at what Verse did in the Florida Gators game this last season. Heavy hands. You see them on the screen. He's got hands like a championship heavyweight boxer. His hands are like 2 stun guns at the point of attack. When he initially comes into, when he jolts into the offensive tackle at the point of attack, attack versus brute grown man power and straight line speed is what he is. Where he tends to line up, he kind of roams side to side. They kind of test the offensive tackles on both sides, challenging both sides with a plethora of polished pass rush moves. That's right. This guy is a polished pass rusher. And really, unpredictability is another key trait that he brings to the table. It was one of his best traits, in fact. Either that, or he'll just do it the good old-fashioned way. As we say in scouting, he'll put those offensive tackles as big boys. He'll put them right back on skates and drive them right back into the quarterback. I don't care if they're 320, 340. He's got the kind of power to drive those big boys right back into the quarterback's face. And that's impressive. Verse is also very opportunistic. He loves to stunt. He likes to stunt and press and squeeze into gaps hard. He's a guy that any kind of slight crease or any kind of leverage to the offensive tackles, depending on the side he's coming into the offensive tackle's inside shoulder, he is going to press that gap exceptionally hard. Verse has something that really can't be taught, and that's a nose for the quarterback. He can smell blood in the pocket, quote unquote, like really like a shark in water can smell blood. Of course, I'm down in Key West, so that's pretty poetic. But that's what he reminds me of. Sometimes my surroundings actually help me fill in the blanks when I talk about and I evaluate a player. It's because just that blood in the water, this guy can sense it. He can smell vulnerability in the pocket. He's a predator, baby. That's what he is. Verse basically, when I looked at him in 2022, I always write down 4 questions or so that I can come back to, kind of a walk away, what my impression was, and for a couple different reasons, kind of what to look for in the next season. Also as a means for holding myself even further accountable, not just with the listing and documenting the game film, but also going back and doing kind of a checks and balances, a self-scout of myself, if you will. And this guy, there's 4 questions I walked away with. Hey, what's his sack production look like? He actually increased from 2022 with 7 sacks up to 9 sacks in 2023. His pressures increased, really increased, in fact, up from 36 in 2022 up to 62 in 2023. So we had a real nice increase on the pressures, put even more heat on the quarterback. Still, he lacks that ability to make really quick adjustments in the pocket as much as you would like. He's more of a straight line speed guy. He has to have it lined up. If a quarterback jukes or moves in the pocket, that can be an issue. And as far as getting his hands on the guy, he still creates that coveted pressure. And he stayed healthy. That was a big one too. I had a question going into this. Will Jared Verse stay healthy in 2023? And unequivocally, the answer to that question was yes, playing in 12 games for the Seminoles. Drilling down even a little bit further, everybody listening, he's an alpha male. He's that guy that, moves the meter with explosive strength. He has equally distributed body mass and power. He has those big old muscular legs you see there on your screen. And he draws a lot of his power from his lower body. He's able to torque up, and he's able to draw a lot of power from his lower body and transfer that up through his upper body into offensive linemen that he's attacking and taking on in order to rush the passer or whatever he's doing, playing the run, whatnot. Long arms. You can see those arms are really long. That's a really nice thing in edge rusher because those long arms can help him keep offensive linemen off him. He's able to kind of move the arms around, those long arms, and able to create a little bit more space for himself, if you will. He's got a decent motor. We'll come back to that in a moment. Capable of being really quick off the snap. You see that a lot on film. If you go back and watch, I provide all the links to all the games on their scouting report of Jared Verse on firstroundmock.com. You can watch this yourself. It's all out there. We don't hide anything. We put everything out in the open for accountability purposes to the general public. Only site in the draft really to do so. But also too, he's really attacking from all angles. This is a guy who can attack from the inside, the outside, or like I said, he can just run right through somebody and get to the quarterback. Excellent hand technique. Not only does he have those heavy hands, but he also has great hand technique at the point of attack. He's a guy that, he has the speed to win the edge, as well as a toolbox, an arsenal of pass rush moves, and includes swim, spin, and head fake moves. He draws a lot of double teams, which draws up, kind of frees up, if you will, for other players to be able to make plays because he's so dangerous. A lot of times he'll draw those double teams. He's a handful, bottom line. He's a guy that loves to play bumper cars with the big boys up in the line of scrimmage, loves contact, physicality, very tough, aggressive guy. He can also disengage on run blocks. He can make wrapping solid tackles. Negatives, circling back to those for a second. When I say decent motor, I want to touch on this for a second. There's great motors, there's good motors, and then there's decent motors, there's sputtering motors, there's low motors. In other words, what's the effort level? How does it show up on tape? Decent motor. Did not like how he looked against Duke and LSU. Kind of looked a little sluggish in those games. He also, in other games, he showed some tightness that I talked about. He has average ability to adjust in the pocket, capable of disengaging against run blocks, but plays a lot of contain in the scheme that they played with the Florida State Seminoles there. Played a lot of outside contain. I'd like to see him more active and aggressive against the run, but oh well, that's really not the reason you're bringing Jared Verse in. This is a pass-happy league where 32 out of 32 teams pass more than 50% of the time per teamrankings.com. You're bringing in a Jared Verse to do one thing, and that's get the quarterback. In summary, the thing that he brings, he's a game changer. That's what we look for here in the first round. Dynamic, game-changing, difference-making type of ability. He has that. He's basically going to create that for a team that takes him, and he's going to put a lot of heat on the quarterback. He's going to light a fire in the pocket, much like Kayvon Thibodeau has made a huge difference for the New York Giants. I look for similar things from Jared Verse, and as far as what this game is about, passing the ball, stopping the pass, really the biggest defensive position you can draft in my mind is edge rusher, and this guy is my edge one. You give him a green light, and he is going to move the meter for his new team in the NFL. Your thoughts, Mr. Landers, on Jared Verse, number 5, FSU. I don't know if you can tell if I'm excited or not, but I am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, DK. Always bringing the heat, bringing the smoke every week, as we do here on the program. And you brought up a good point. It's really just a word you brought, and that is want. And when you look at the body of work from Jared Verse, that's, I think, a great word to describe him, because, yes, we are talking about his work at Florida State, but we got to remember that's not where he started off. He started off at UAlbany, which a lot of people don't know where the heck that is. I mean, great point. It's a lower tier school. A lot of people didn't really know he even came from here, but over 2 seasons, 15 games there. And obviously, Florida State was impressed with his work at the lower competition. 74 tackles, 21.5 tackles for loss, 14.5 sacks, 15 quarterback hurries. That got him on the radar for Florida State and brought him over to the ACC to then continue his dominance. So credit to the scouting at Florida State for taking notice of what he was doing and bring him on to a higher stage, a better program, which has produced a ton of NFL talent over the years. Very own Bobby Butler here on the network, as well as Primetime Dion and so many others at Florida State with their tremendous acumen for producing NFL quality talent. And when we look at Jared Verse, you mentioned he's a guy who has he looks seasoned already, like a veteran in terms of just his poise, in terms of his bags of tricks, you can call them, what moves he can bring each and every snap, each and every single quarter. You really don't know where this guy's going to go. He's not a one type of pass rush move, and that's it. That's all you can defend. He's got just an arsenal that he can bring whenever he pleases to, because as you mentioned, you see him on the screen, he is a unit. I mean, he is an absolute guy who is yoked, who's in the gym. He power cleans 360, squats 555, benches close to 450. So he's doing something right in the gym. And we always say, DK, hard work pays off. And he's doing work behind the scenes in his dorm room, in his classroom, in the gym, at practices that we can now see on the field that you've watched countless game film over and over and over again. And like what we say is you never know who's watching. And a lot of NFL potential NFL players who are in college, high school, even they like I said, they might have games where they're not as dominant. That's just how life is. That's just how it goes. But Jared Verse, he definitely, I would say, shines more when the lights are brightest, when there's people watching him. And like you mentioned, his motor is solid. It's not going to be A+ through the roof like we see with guys like Lawrence Taylor, so on and so forth, who just have that that unlimitless energy. Mm-hmm. But he brings it whenever he's on. He is hard to stop. And I feel that with the right coaching staff, with the right veterans around him also, because that's another thing very well, is that these are all young kids. They're all coming out of college. It doesn't matter if you're anywhere from 21 or 24. You still don't have any experience in the National Football League where there are grown men who are trying to go and take your job. And I think that Jared Verse, with the right group around him, the right coaching staff, I think he has all the tools to succeed, because you mentioned he's great. He's flexible. He's got strength. He's got great athleticism. And he is going to be hard to stop in the NFL draft this upcoming year. And that's the thing, is that I think most years this guy would get a whole lot more love. And as you mentioned, he's your edge rusher one, rightfully so. But I just think that it's unfortunate because this is, as we know, a very heavy offensive quarterback, wide receiver driven draft. And the defensive guys aren't getting enough love. Well, that's what we're here to do, DK. We're here to shine some light on these guys. And that's why we are here talking about Jared Verse. But overall, I love this man. He is an absolute game changer, I think. Whoever picks him up, their defensive production is going to skyrocket, and they are going to have a great time with this guy on their team. Someone who I could see us talking about 5-10 years from now, talking about someone who's always at the Pro Bowl and always putting in some good work and leading their team to playoff appearances, potential Super Bowl appearances, and championships. I think he's got that X factor to him. And I think overall, Jared Verse is a solid player. I can't wait to see who picks him up and how his career unfolds. Mr. Kelly, your final thoughts on Jared Verse?
Well, Mr. Landers, you make a lot of good points there, and I just like how you kind of shine the spotlight, on him, talking about how he rises to the occasion under the lights. And you just kind of perfectly summarized him there, and what the value he is that he brings to the table. And you're right, this is a quarterback-driven league. It's all about the quarterback, the receivers, all that kind of thing. But right after that, you see, I look at trends in the league when I'm also putting grades on players, and that's the trend. It's a pass happy league. So if we have that in place, if we have our quarterback in place, we have some receivers in place, this is the perfect time to take a Jared Verse. And he's a professional. He's a guy that kind of knows where to punch the gas, and some of it too. And I will say this in defense of Jared Verse. Some of the times when these guys take their foot off the gas a little bit, I do take this into consideration. Sometimes they're setting the table.
That's true.
They got some off, just like a pitcher with an off-speed changeup or something, and sometimes they can, and that's what Jared Verse really does well, is he just keeps testing these offensive tackles and offensive linemen, and whether he has his hand down in the dirt and he, pre-snap, or he's standing up, or he's back a little ways, or he delays, or he's a little slower, a little faster. Then whoop, he got those heavy hands, got those quick hands. He's doing different things, and that's the key to success rushing the passer in the National Football League. Hey, these offensive tackles have seen it all, done it all, been there, done that, bought the T-shirt. A lot of these veteran offensive tackles, you got to have more to your game than just speed and power. You have to be unpredictable, and that's something you touched on, Mr. Landers, is that element of unpredictability. Also, that element of hunger, I like how you touched on. We don't even know where this guy came from. Respectfully, to before he was at Florida State, and so you got a guy that kind of came up, seized the opportunity when he got to FSU and the proud history they have with the greats you talked about, and now has done really well. Hey, listen, in my mind, I had this guy as a top 5 pick in last year's draft. Had he would have declared, he came back and had, he risked the injury factor. He said, I'm coming back for another year at FSU. Again, he stood in there with his teammates and everything, and he went through that season. He stayed healthy. And now this is a guy, again, that's right there on the doorstep of a top 5, top 10, depending how things fall in the first round. But this guy is that difference maker. This is a guy that you bring in, and he really changes the culture of what you're doing on your team defensively. And this is a guy that offensive coordinators and offenses are going to have to know, hey, where's number 5 if you choose the word number 5 or whatever number you choose in the NFL. But where is Jared Verse? I mean, we got to know that going into this thing, because when he's on, he's darn near unblockable. He's almost unstoppable. I mean, the kind of power he has, it's like having a Mike Tyson or Evander Holyfield playing edge rusher. He's got those hands. When I say heavy hands, he jolts 300+ pound men like a little kid would throw a stuffed animal. I mean, this guy boom. I mean, he comes in, boom, with those heavy hands. He jolts grown men. That's the type of power he has. So yeah, I'm excited, Mr. Landers. This guy, if you can't tell, this is a first-round guy all day, every day. He was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of them aren't, but Jared Verse was very fun to watch. And I tell you what, whatever fan base gets him, if you're watching the show after your team drafted him, be happy. If you stumble across this on the internet, be happy, because you got yourself a good one in Jared Verse.
Yes, sir. Well said, Mr. Kelly. Final words on Jared Verse is this guy is a game changer, flat out. Whoever drafts him is going to get a superstar in the making. As always, Daniel Kelly, appreciate you coming on the program, talking college prospects, coming into the NFL, ready to make their mark. Today it's been an episode on Jared Verse, defensive end coming out of Florida. Once again, I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, go home and watch some draft film this weekend as we get closer and closer to the draft, and we will talk with